have. Ranting, reflecting, reasoning, reckoning.
The Huddle with paperplusoffice.co.nz. Buy all your office supplies and stationery online now.
It is 21 to 6, the Huddle this evening. Cameron Slater and Bill Ralston. Evening to you, gentlemen.
Good evening, Susan.
Well, the first topic this evening of this review today, talking about keeping kids, young people out of prison cells. Got a bit of feedback on that because we've been talking about it coming down the hour. Hi, Susan, can you ask the judge if these victims of these youth offenders also feel vulnerable? How about young persons who are behaving themselves? Listening to it seems like the cops' fault. What's happening to the planet? That from Tom. I think if youth are committing adult crimes, they should be punished as adults. Before we waste more money on our naughty youth, how about seeing to the victims first? Boo-hoo, writes Keith Cam. You can tell where many of our listeners are coming from on this one.
Yeah, I'm on that with them. You know, if you commit the crime, do the time. And in these small towns, there's really no other option other than to lock them in the cells. And back in the old days, they'd get a twist of the ear and a boot up the bum by the local constable. And we seem to have gone all soft on that. And consequently, we've got these little terrors causing problems in the small towns.
Yeah, what we're talking about here, kids who are picked up overnight, committing acts of violence or break-ins or drunkenness or whatever. Now, the real problem here is that when the cops call their caregivers, parents or whoever, there's no one there and no one's interested in picking them up and looking after them.
That's why the kids are running out of control, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, look, I mean, a lot of teenagers are going to find themselves in a scrape of bother, but if there's someone not at the end of the phone, what chance do they blimmin' have, Bill?
Well, that's true. And, I mean, you know, you've got a situation where it's a lose-lose for the cops. If they just let the kid go, and they got into further trouble or killed or injured or whatever, they'd be attacked for how dare you let this child go and, why weren't you a taxi service for him and run him home and make sure he was tucked up in bed? Or worse, they keep him overnight and, you've locked up a child. I'm sorry, these kids are, some of these are as young as 10, but, we're talking 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds.
Yeah,
and then you get the case, though, where you get someone who's been locked up and their mother goes running to the press because he only got given noodles, in the morning instead of, a 5-course breakfast.
Yeah, but where was his mother overnight? That's the question, and I think Bill brought it up, and it's a blimmin' good question, Cam, because where are the parents when these kids get themselves into bother?
Well, blaming everybody else.
Well, the parents do bear some responsibility, I would argue.
Absolutely.
Well, they do. Yeah, no, they do. But they will be the first to complain if their child is incarcerated overnight. In fact, the old short, sharp shock theory of being locked up in a prison, a police cell overnight at the age of sort of 15, might make you think twice before you went out and did a crime.
Yeah, well, back in the old days, they would have just handcuffed them around a power pole and let everybody mock them.
I don't know which planet you lived on, Cam, and which country you were in. Were you in Salem with the witches when they were burning them there?
Now, there's a good point.
Well, you were? Okay.
No,
I'm absolutely hoping not. Yeah, it is interesting, actually, the response to that one. And and talking to Judge Beecroft about it earlier, Bill, and he talked about a case of a kid who hanged himself there, and there was the boy on the North Shore who was just being a bit of a naughty kid a few years ago, found himself in a prison cell with an absolutely appalling human being and was killed. So, it really probably isn't any great place for young people.
No, and I mean, they shouldn't be in there, but, you can't blame the cops for not running them home if there is no one at home, and B, if there's no one there to pick them up and take them home by the scruff of the neck and put them to bed, you can't blame the cops.
Not the police, the problem is deadbeat parents.
Yeah, it is. All right, I think we've exhausted that one. Cam, the scientists in Italy have been sent to prison for not predicting the deadly earthquake.
Well, it's an interesting precedent, isn't it? Imagine if we did that here in New Zealand and started locking up judges that let people out on bail who then went and killed people.
I like it if we had that law here with earthquake predictions. I mean, where would Ken Ring be doing life if he wasn't careful?
Yeah, well, it's some of his predictions, exactly.
No, but it's an absurd thing because... Look, we've got a swarm of quakes that have been occurring up the East Coast at the moment, and the earthquake guys are going, well, it's not unusual to have reasonably sizable quakes up the East Coast of the North Island. But, I mean, if there was a big one tomorrow in Gisborne, under the Italian laws, you'd be locking these poor guys up for not panicking
it's
people enough.
It's an inexact science, isn't it? And we've got no control over how the Earth shakes and what it does, and you can only go on evidence that from history or from general knowledge.
Absolutely.
And then the Earth goes and changes all of that. Yeah. No one thought there was ever going to be an earthquake in
Christchurch. It was always going to be willing to know. We'll take a break there. Bill Ralston and Cameron Slater come back and talk US presidential debate next. It's 6:50.
It's Susan Wood on Larry Williams Drive with the business banking specialists at Westpac.
6:13, Cameron Slater and Bill Ralston, the Huddle this evening. And Bill, the presidential debates, I think the sport, the bit of it I really adore is the feigned sort of familiarity and friendships, those sort of special, long, lingering handshakes, when you can see actually in some of the shots the looks they are giving each other.
Before and after, shoulder rubbing and hey, and they sit there throughout the debate because in this one they were just divided in two halves of the screen almost throughout, smiling at each other. Slightly menacing smiles, but still being nice and warm and really polite. It was interesting watching the worm on particularly Obama when he really got stuck in a couple of times on Romney. The worm started to fade. People like to hear, hope and vision stuff, and they don't like the political badgering that sometimes goes on. But Obama certainly won that debate.
He didn't win the likeability by much, though, Cam. 48% likeability, according to the CNN poll, 47% for Romney. And Romney looking presidential, doing okay in the Commander-in-Chief stakes. Yeah,
I heard your preamble about that presidential, the Commander-in-Chief and looking presidential. It's an interesting thing there. When they started, this debate was supposed to be on foreign policy. And when they started to get into the detail of that, you had bizarre claims by Romney that Syria is Iran's only ally in the Arab world and it's their route to the sea. But Iran has a southern coastline with access to the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, and it doesn't have a land border with Syria. So God help us if he's the Commander-in-Chief.
Yeah, his geography wasn't that great. I did like, there was a great line, and Obama's best when he gets off the pre-programmed stuff, the messaging that he's been learning, and he got criticised by Romney for running the Navy down to having almost as few ships as they did in 1916. And he said, and he came straight back saying, times have changed. We don't need horses. We don't need so many bayonets now. And it was a great line. It made Romney look really out of touch. But the other thing Romney did was keep dragging the foreign affairs argument back to the state of the economy and jobs, which I think is his most fertile ground and where he'll get most of his support.
Well, Cam, that is what Americans care about.
Strong on foreign policy, and he lost narrowly to Obama. Obama also lost on the flip side of that on the economy, as you said, Bill.
Yep.
But I think narrowly overall, Obama won that debate.
Today, the polls are showing. The CNN polls are showing.
I don't really trust those exit polls that they do over those. I like to look and watch all the tracking polls that Nate Silver does at 5:38 and what Real Clear Politics. I think if you get a combination of those two, you get a good feel. But the bottom line here is that the Electoral College is still against Romney in the maths. It just really,
so your money's,
really is
quick last question, your money's on Obama, Cam. What's your money on, Bill?
I think you might actually find that Romney will sneak in simply because Obama's vote that came out last time won't come out in the same strength again for him.
Exactly. I wonder if you may not be right. We'll know in 2 weeks. Nice to talk to you both, Bill Ralston and Cameron Slater. It is 10 to 6, Sport next.